I started my pilot training at 19 years old, and what I'm going to do is run you through the start to finish of my entire journey towards becoming a pilot. And I'm going to break it down in this kind of logbook series that I'm now going to make, so that you guys get a really detailed, in-depth analysis of what you can expect from start to finish, what the challenges are, what the biggest problems I had, what the easiest parts of the training were, and so that I can make sure that you guys have clarity on each phase of training. And hopefully, if you keep up to date with the channel, then you will have a really deep understanding of what it takes to become a commercial pilot. If you don't already know, I am an airline pilot, and I've been flying for the past 4 years or so in the commercial world. However, my flying journey started a lot younger. Now, I'll try and give you guys a really brief overview of my background. So I'm a British Pakistani. I was from a low socioeconomic background, and I'm not going to talk too much about the financial element because I want to focus it mainly and purely on the journey itself, so that you guys get an understanding. And I want to keep it at a simple surface level understanding, so that it's completely transparent and clear. I want my message to come across as concisely as possible so that you guys don't get confused. But first of all, where does the journey actually start? I've mentioned the title of this video is a logbook walkthrough, but ultimately it does start with the ground school element. And just to give you guys some context, I did do a little bit of flying before I started my actual course in terms of my flight school towards becoming an airline pilot. And how that looked for me was I did a few flights in my local aerodrome, about 16 hours of flying. However, I just thought I'd let you guys know that I did have some flying experience before I started, but equally there was guys on my course who didn't have that experience. So it is completely feasible, if you don't have any experience, to start on a training program. Now, for me personally, I went through the integrated route to give you guys some context. And what that means is everything is basically done for you in terms of the flight school is going to organize all of the exams, all of the flying, all of the exams and skill tests in the flying stages. And you basically just follow their structure. And for me, that worked best. Now, the reason it worked best for me was because I wanted the pressure off in terms of thinking about how many landings I need to do for the night rating, how many this and that, how many hours I need for instrument time in order to get my CPL. I didn't want to have to worry about all of those things. I just wanted to focus my attention on solely and purely the exams that I needed to do, have the flight school tell me, you are sitting these exams, lock in on those exams, complete those exams, move on to the next stage. Ultimately, I know a lot of guys, and I've spoken to people on my one-to-one calls who have had this particular mindset where they want to pick and choose what they do and at which stage that they do it. So for example, the ground school exams, if you did it through a modular route, you can choose which exams you're going to do first and which exams you're going to do later. Now, I understand that mindset, that it might be easier if you can do that. However, with the mindset I had, I just wanted someone to choose that for me, who have been proven and they've checked that this is the best method of doing it. They've done that. The flight schools have done that. So I just said, I'm just going to be at your mercy. You tell me what to do, I do it. And that was the structure and the mindset that I had when it came to approaching my training. And the integrated course in itself, I mean, I've got no affiliations with any integrated program. I'm just saying from my own experience, has been one of the most fruitful decisions that I made in terms of my career towards becoming a pilot. And I don't necessarily have a preference in terms of what you guys should do, because everybody's situation is different. I know that the modular route is a lot cheaper, and I know people out there cannot afford that £100,000 fee to start your training in an integrated school, which is understandable. But I'll leave that financial element out of there. What we're going to focus on is what the actual challenges were and how you guys can hopefully implement what I did in my story to help you on your journeys towards becoming a pilot. So that, one, you can then start thinking, well, Adam was able to do it with all of these hurdles, so why can't I do it? And two, hopefully then we can start working together on a one-to-one basis, because you will have built trust in the fact that I managed to overcome these challenges and we managed to make it towards the airline industry despite the problems that I may have faced during the training. Now, I'm going to just jump straight into the integrated course and when I started. I started in March of 2019, and before that point, I was working in Sainsbury's, and Sainsbury's is a convenience store in the UK. It's just a local shop or supermarket that you would go to get your groceries and whatnot. And I was working there. And for me, that taught me some really valuable skills in terms of communication, in terms of building my focus towards the aviation industry as a whole, but I didn't really do much at all other than relax, because I had searched around on YouTube and Google and through loads of different forums, and from what I understood, most of the training gets done on that start date, and it's going to be an intense few months or so of starting your training and hammering it all out. And so it's better to just relax until that point. That was what I was told. Now, looking back, and with the clients that I work with at the moment, I really heavily encourage them to do other things before they start and prepare themselves properly before they start. Now, for me personally, what I was doing was some maths practice from my GCSEs days, and I would go online and have a look at like some GCSE physics level stuff, because that was what I did for the actual assessments in order to get into the flight school in the first place. So I was doing relatively surface level things like that. Then I started, and when I started, the first week of ground school was probably one of the most overwhelming and scary weeks that I've ever had in my entire life. And what I mean by that is, essentially, I was in a room full of really experienced and qualified individuals, and I was 19 years old, just out of school, and I'd just come from a supermarket job at Sainsbury's. So you can imagine the caliber of guys in there, finished their uni degrees, had done aeronautical engineering, all of these really challenging degrees, and had these amazing qualifications. Some of them were quite far in life. They were 30, 40 years old and were thinking, oh, well, I wanted to become a pilot all my life, and I've worked throughout however many years, and they were working in banks before and doing all of these cool things, which is absolutely great. And I love that people take that career shift and decide, you know, I'm going to pursue that dream that I had. But for me at the time, when I was 19, looking at all of these high-flying titans around me, I was thinking to myself, gosh, this is going to be quite a challenge in terms of keeping up with these guys. Now, as you can imagine, time progressed. We had 14 total ATPL exams to complete at CAE, and we were splitting them between 7 exams, and that was over a 6-month period. So there was 3 months in the first phase of ground school, and then we went to the second phase of ground school, which was another 3 months of 7 other subjects. But the first 3 months of the first 7 subjects, I would say, were the most challenging 3 months of my entire life. Why? Because there were a lot of growing pains and a lot of unfamiliarity, just an overall level of confusion as to what to expect when it came to the actual assessments that I was going to have to do. I knew that flying-wise I was okay, because I had done some previous flying in the past, and I knew that I enjoyed it, and I knew that it was something I wanted to do. But then when I got into the first week of ground school, I started to think to myself, what have I got myself in for? And that meant a lot for me. It was emotionally very, very concerning, because I had invested £100,000 of not my own money, but my mum's money. Now, again, some of the guys in my particular situation have invested their own money. So the risk feels substantial still, but it's not going to burden anybody else, if you see what I mean. Whereas in my position and in many other people's positions in the course, it was their parents who had funded the training. So we were responsible for making sure that their investment was not wasted. And that adds a layer of pressure onto our shoulders. So after the first week, when I realized this isn't going to be a breeze, but that this is actually a challenge, that was when I was coming to terms with the reality of what I had just done. Before that point, I would say I was in a very arrogant mindset that I thought, you know, I'm going to pass and ace these exams. You know, people have done it in the past. I wouldn't get on this course if it wasn't for the simple fact that I can pass these and that they think that I can pass them too. Now, I wasn't any further from the truth. The reality is you can get on these programs if you do the right preparation. The actual scary element of it is that you're still not guaranteed to complete the course. They will say in these induction days and in these presentations that they produce that, oh yeah, we have a 98% success rate of all of our cadets. But what they're factoring in is not the guys that don't make it at the first stages or the middle stages or the later stages. They're factoring in everybody that's made it through the entire course and then managed to secure a job. That is the 90 however many percent that have made it as airline pilots. But throughout the entirety of that course, I had seen lots and lots of people give up on their dream of becoming a pilot. Now, bear in mind, this was 2019. as you guys can imagine, a year later was COVID. So that also played a factor into why I may have seen a lot of people drop out. But equally, it was not by any means an easy feat that I had decided to get myself in for. So the first week was a really challenging week, and I realized that this was going to be something I really needed to lock in on. And one thing that I was doing was trying to read the books, trying to listen as closely and attentively as I could in the lessons, simply because I did not know what to expect. So the first 2, 3, 4 weeks rolled by where I was doing exactly that. I was highlighting as many things as I could in these books. In fact, I've got some of the books here. So if I show you my electrics book, like the first few, however many pages, there's a load of highlighting and scribbles. I don't know if you guys can see. There's loads of highlighting and scribbles and a lot of stuff that I was just like locked in on the books. I look at this and I just think, how silly was I? Because can you guys see? I highlighted pretty much an entire page. Do you guys understand? Like, there is absolutely no reason or no likelihood of me ever memorizing that entire page of information. But I was doing it. I was thinking to myself, I need to memorize all of this book in order to pass this exam, which is electrics and electronics. And that is the smallest book that I have. There's about 13 other books just there that are almost triple the size of that book. And I was thinking to myself, I need to memorize all of this. Now, as you guys can imagine, that is not feasibly possible. It isn't. It just simply isn't. But I thought this was the only way. And so I really focused as much as I could. And as you guys may know, I was commuting to the flight school as well. So I was living in a town called High Wycombe and the school was in Oxford. So that was a 45-minute drive every day, sometimes an hour if there was traffic. So I would make sure I get there even earlier so that I could ensure that I don't miss anything. But equally, that was adding 2 hours worth of driving to my day that I couldn't spend revising, because I can't just sit there and read a book whilst I'm driving on a motorway. And ultimately, that does have a massive effect, especially when you're starting out and you don't know what you're doing, and you know all of this time is being taken up. One thing that I really do urge you guys to do is get the right information, do the right research before you start. And people think they're doing the right research. This is the scary part. You might be thinking, oh, I've got what I need. But I was speaking to a client the other day, and he was, before he started his training, was looking through PPL theory. But he didn't realize, he didn't know any different. He was looking through PPL theory. And what he was going to be doing is ATPL theory. And there is a massive difference between those two things. Anybody that's done the PPL and then done the ATPL, they will know there is completely different scale of quantity and volume of learning that you need to do. And yet he was in the understanding that he was doing the right thing. And this is why I say it's so important to get the right information and to do the right research before you start anything. And you're going to end up wasting your time if you do start trying to revise a certain area that you think is right, but then it turns out that it's not right. And this is what I was doing. I was thinking that this is the best way to learn, so I'm going to revise by reading through the whole page and memorizing the whole page and regurgitating it in an exam. And that's the best way to approach these ATPL exams. Now, yeah, I had spoken to some airline pilots, some cadets who are a bit further ahead than me. And yeah, they give you general information, they give you some advice. And I'll be honest, there is a lot of beating around the bush when it comes to the advice that they give. They may not give you exactly what you want. Ultimately, a lot of people are very protective. They like to gatekeep information sometimes. And one thing for me that I noticed was that was what was happening. A lot of cadets, especially who were ahead, they didn't necessarily want you doing better than them because ultimately you're competition to them, right? So they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm not going to tell you exactly how to pass the exam because otherwise it's too easy for you. And I had challenges, so why should I make your life easier? And I get that. I do get that because ultimately it's a competitive field. It's a very difficult and challenging industry to navigate around. So I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you are going and sifting your research in towards the right areas. And I think genuinely, had I done that, then it would have made my life in those first few weeks a lot easier. However, 4 weeks had passed by, and in my particular flight academy, there was a room that everybody would go and pray in. Now, as you guys know, I'm a Muslim and I come from a Muslim background where, alhamdulillah, I pray 5 times a day. And I went for Jum'ah prayers, which is our Friday prayers, in this room. And I was blessed, and I genuinely mean this from the very bottom of my heart. I was blessed to have met a really, really kind guy who, as you guys know, there's a massive brotherhood vibe with the Muslim community. And we don't have that, oh, you're competition to me kind of rift between us when it comes to any information that he may give or any advice that he would give. It was coming from a pure place. And in the environment of Jum'ah, of course, that's going to even be further heightened. He was really, really willing to help me, which I appreciated so, so much, because I was at a stage about 4 weeks in where I was really struggling. And people in my course were doing really well. They were answering all the questions. And I was just sat there thinking, how do I not know what to do here? I'm so confused. And I'm listening to all of this stuff. I'm trying my best to keep up with the lessons. I feel like I know everything. And I did. I knew a relatively large amount, but I would say I was probably one of the bottom students at the time in terms of my ability to answer questions. When I was asked a question, I would often feel a little bit confused about how to answer the question or what to say, or whether or not what I was saying was correct. So there was a little bit of underconfidence when it came to me in the classes, whereas the other guys seemed very confident, and it was scary for me. Now, one famous quote that I really, really hang my hat on, and I especially applied it to my pilot training, is comparison is the thief of joy. And for me, that resonates massively now, because during that period of my training, I was in a particular mind frame that I genuinely did not have any joy in my pilot training. And why? Because I was comparing myself to everybody else. However, I started to understand that I am running my own race. And what that meant was I was going to just block out all the white noise and just said to myself, I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. But this particular guy came at the right time for me. So what did he say to me? He gave me so much valuable information and so much clarity with it all. It was not like beating around the bush. It was all direct and exactly what I needed. And I think there's something around our culture. He was from a Muslim background as well. He was from a ethnic minority background as well. So he understood that I didn't want any BS. I just wanted the information. We just understood each other. And I think that's something that is underestimated in our society. When you find someone from a similar background to yourself, you automatically get that click where it's like, he just understands what I need, basically. And he understood exactly what I needed. I just needed direct information. What do I need to do to pass the exams? And so he told me. And ultimately, it was a matter of just answering as many questions as I could. And that would help me retain the information. So what did I do? I walked away from that conversation and I said to myself, that is exactly what I'm going to focus on. Just doing and practicing as many questions as I physically could. And that is exactly what I did. I decided later on that I was going to forget looking through and highlighting every little part of the book. And if you see towards the end of this book, you will see that the highlightings started to wear off, because what I was doing instead was answering questions, and I was just hammering out question after question after question after question. And that for me was, as you guys can see, there's like way less highlightings here, and it's because this is at the end of the book. And I was thinking to myself, it no longer matters about memorizing all this information. I did my absolute best to pay attention and really listen in the lessons. And that is also an element of respecting your instructors. Please don't just sit in the lesson and ignore your instructors. They've worked hard to deliver this information to you guys. It's important that you pay attention. It will help you in the long run as well, what they're saying. It will help you remember things. Some of the things that my instructor said, I still remember to this day, which are really, really valuable for me. So definitely pay attention in your lessons. But then outside of your lessons, the revision that you do, try and tailor it towards something that's going to help you pass your exams. Now, that is what helped me pass my exams. But in terms of, that was just a method that worked for me. Now, a lot of other people need a different approach of passing the exams, and that's completely understandable too. But understanding where and what is going to work for you is more important. Because when I started out, I'm pretty sure I was expecting to just about scrape my passes and just about scrape getting through all of those ATPL exams. But we got to the end of the phase 1 exams and we got our results back, and I had actually got an average of 90% across all 7 exams. So as you can imagine, my confidence from being all the way down here was all the way up here leading into phase 2. So I was really confident in phase 2 that I was going to do the exact same thing and I was going to pass those exams. But the first phase for me was the most challenging phase. And that was simply due to the fact that I had not known what to do until I met that particular person. And I genuinely credit so much to him. I don't even have contact with him, which is so sad because he got a new number and then I never was able to get his number back. But I genuinely credit so much of my success to that guy. And I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, think about him and I make prayers for him a lot, because I think he was someone that really, really helped me navigate this industry at a time where I needed that help. My phase 1 was very, very challenging. And I know that you guys might be going through challenges too. So despite me having success, I want you to have success too. And so if you are in that position where you're struggling and you need help and you need to find someone that is going to help navigate this really, really difficult industry, then try your best to outsource as many people as you can. Go onto Instagram, DM pilots. I know that it's hard to do that, and I know that a lot of pilots don't respond to you, which is absolutely understandable from my point of view. I know that I used to get a lot of DMs, a lot of messages, and it was quite difficult. Even now, I get even 10 times on steroids amount of DMs and messages. I do my best to filter the advice through this YouTube channel so that you guys get the answers to your questions through the channel. But equally, if you are in a position where you're struggling, try and outsource help. Try and find someone that's maybe a little bit ahead of you, or someone that you know who is not struggling in the way that you are, and see what they're doing that might help you to also navigate in the same path. And if you want help from me personally, then just go in the description and book in a call with myself. Now, this is the first kind of part of my logbook walkthrough, but the next part I'll be talking about my phase 2 and how that was different to my phase 1. And then I will try to make this on a weekly basis so that you guys get the full detailed breakdown of what pilot training will look like. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys very soon.